The Aegis space station was in total chaos. Red lights flashed everywhere as the siren screamed. Commander Krell and his alien guard stood outside room 402. Their hands were shaking with fear. A deep growl shook the floor. The sensors showed a monster inside that should not exist. They blasted the door open, expecting to find a bloody scene of death and destruction, but there was no blood. Jack was sitting calmly on his sofa, with a massive black beast on his lap. Then, Jack did the unthinkable. He tapped the monster on its nose and told it to be quiet. The red lights of the Galactic Trade Station Aegis flashed like a heartbeat in the dark hallways. The sound of the emergency siren was loud and painful. For the aliens living on the station, this was the worst day of their lives. They had never seen a level red emergency before. Commander Krell, a tall alien with blue scales and 4 arms, was leading his security team toward Sector 4. His heart was beating fast. In his hands, he held a heavy plasma rifle. Behind him, 10 other guards followed, their eyes wide with fear. They were all looking at one specific door, room 402. The station's computer system was screaming a warning that everyone could hear. Warning. Class 5 Apex Predator detected in room 402. Extreme danger. Life signs of the human occupant are fading. In the galactic ranking, a Class 5 Predator was a creature of nightmares. These were animals that could destroy entire squads of soldiers with their bare claws. Most planets didn't even have Class 5 creatures because they were too dangerous to exist. But now, the sensors said one was sitting right inside a small living room on the space station. As Krell and his team reached the door, they stopped. They didn't need the computer to tell them something was wrong. They could feel it. The floor beneath their boots was vibrating. A deep, low sound was coming from behind the heavy steel door. It was a RRRR sound, a vibrating growl that felt like a tectonic plate shifting. It was the sound of a monster that didn't just want to kill you, it wanted to erase you. Krell's scales turned a pale gray, which was a sign of extreme terror for his species. He whispered to his team to get ready. Krell was sure that the human inside, a man named Jack, was already dead. Jack was a quiet engineer who had moved to the station a few months ago. He was friendly and liked by everyone. To Krell, humans looked soft and weak. They didn't have scales, they didn't have 4 arms, and they didn't have natural armor. He felt a deep sadness because he believed Jack was being eaten at this very moment. We cannot let the beast escape into the rest of the station. Krell shouted. On my command, blast the door and fire everything you have. The guard set a small explosive charge on the lock. With a loud boom, the heavy steel door flew off its hinges. Smoke and dust filled the air. The alien guards rushed in, their rifles glowing with blue energy, ready to kill the monster. They were shouting and screaming, expecting to see a scene of blood and bone. But as the smoke started to clear, the shouting stopped. One by one, the guards lowered their weapons. Their mouths fell open in shock. The room was not covered in blood. In fact, it was very peaceful. In the middle of the room, there was a soft, orange sofa. Jack was sitting there, leaning back comfortably. He wasn't dead. He wasn't even hurt. He was holding a digital book in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. But he wasn't alone. Sitting right on top of him, covering his entire lap and chest, was a massive, jet-black creature. It was a Terran Panther from Earth. Its fur was like silk, its muscles were like coiled springs, and its golden eyes glowed in the dim light. Its claws, which were 4 inches long, were digging slightly into the sofa cushions. When the guards entered, the panther didn't run. It stood up slowly, showing its full, terrifying size. It was a murder cat, in every sense of the word. Its teeth were the size of daggers, and its body was built for one thing: hunting. The panther opened its mouth and let out a roar so loud that it cracked a glass window on the far side of the room. The sound waves hit the guards like a physical punch. 3 of the guards actually dropped their guns and fell to their knees. They were looking at pure, raw death, but then, something even more shocking happened. Jack didn't jump. He didn't scream. He didn't even drop his coffee. He looked up from his book, looking quite annoyed that his door had just been blown up. He looked at the massive panther, which was still growling at the aliens. With a tired sigh, Jack reached out his hand. The aliens held their breath, waiting for the panther to bite Jack's arm off. Instead, Jack used his finger to gently boop the panther right on its wet, black nose. "Shut up, Luna. Behave yourself." "They are just the neighbors," Jack said in a calm, bored voice. To the total disbelief of the security team, the terrifying monster stopped roaring immediately. It made a small, mew sound, like a tiny kitten, and sat back down on Jack's legs. It began to rub its large head against Jack's chin, purring so loudly that the walls started to shake again. Jack patted the panther's head and looked at Commander Krell. "Do you guys usually knock before blowing up doors, or is this a special occasion?" Commander Krell couldn't speak. His brain was trying to understand what he was seeing. This human was sitting with a Class 5 killer as if it were a stuffed toy. The murder cat could have killed everyone in the room in seconds, yet it was acting like a loyal servant to a weak human. The guard stood frozen, looking at the sharp teeth and the golden eyes of the beast. They realized that Jack wasn't a prisoner of this monster. He was its master. The question that burned in their minds was, what kind of species looks at a killing machine and decides to bring it home as a friend? The news of the murder cat spread through the Galactic Trade Station like a wildfire. Within hours, Jack was summoned to the High Council chamber. This was not a normal meeting room, it was a massive, circular hall where the leaders of 12 different alien species sat to make the most important decisions in the galaxy. Usually, this room was used to discuss wars or trade treaties. Today, it was being used because of a single black cat from Earth. Jack walked into the center of the hall, looking very small under the bright, blue lights. But he wasn't alone. Walking silently beside him, her paws making no sound on the cold marble floor, was Luna. The moment Luna entered the room, a wave of panic hit the council. Several leaders stood up so fast they knocked over their chairs. Commander Krell was there, too, standing behind a thick sheet of transparent energy glass. "Please. Stay behind the safety line," one of the council members screamed into a microphone. They had installed a powerful energy shield between themselves and Jack. To the aliens, Jack was carrying a live bomb that could go off at any second. They watched Luna's every move, their many eyes wide with a mix of horror and fascination. Luna, however, seemed bored. She looked around the giant room, yawned, revealing her long, white teeth, and then sat down by Jack's boots, leaning her heavy body against his leg. A tall, thin alien with 4 eyes and skin like purple glass leaned forward. This was High Counselor Vax. He was the head of the Biological Safety Department. He cleared his throat and projected a giant hologram in the middle of the room. The hologram showed a 3D scan of Luna's body. "Human Jack," Vax began, his voice trembling slightly. "We have analyzed the biological data of this creature. Our computers have never seen anything like it. This animal has a bite force of over 1,000 pounds per square inch. It can see in total darkness. Its claws are coated in bacteria that can cause instant infection. It is a biological masterpiece of murder. Why is it in a civilian living area?" Jack looked at the scary hologram and then looked down at Luna, who was currently trying to lick a spot on her paw. "Well," Jack said, rubbing the back of his neck. "She's a panther. On my planet, we call them big cats. She's here because she's my friend. I raised her since she was a cub. She had no mother, so I became her family." The room went silent. The aliens looked at each other in total confusion. The idea of family between a predator and a prey was something their science books said was impossible. In the rest of the galaxy, if a predator saw a smaller creature, it ate it. There was no friendship. Counselor Vax shook his head. "Friendship is a chemical reaction in the brain, Jack. But biology is stronger than feelings. Our experts say that one day, her instinct will wake up. She will look at you and see a piece of meat. You are a soft-skinned human. You have no claws. You have no armor. You are choosing to live with your own death. Is this a custom on Earth? Do all humans keep monsters in their homes? The counselor's voice was full of genuine worry. He didn't hate Jack. He thought Jack was insane and needed to be saved from himself. Jack smiled a little. It's not just panthers. We have dogs that used to be wolves. We have tiny cats that think they are tigers. We even have people who keep snakes and crocodiles. We call it domestication. It's a bond of trust. I provide her with food and a warm place to sleep, and she provides me with, well, she keeps me company. She protects me. The aliens murmured to each other. The word trust was being translated into their languages, but it didn't quite make sense in this context. To them, trust was something you had with a business partner, not a killing machine. To test this, Counselor Vax signaled a robot. A small, mechanical arm reached out from the floor near Jack and dropped a piece of raw, red meat about 10 feet away from Luna. The reaction was instant. Luna's ears snapped forward. Her body became a straight line of pure muscle. She didn't run, she blurred. One moment she was sitting, and the next, she was standing over the meat, her tail twitching dangerously. The alien guards behind the energy shield raised their rifles, their fingers on the triggers. The air in the room became heavy with suspense. They expected Luna to go into a killing frenzy. "Luna, wait," Jack said. His voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. The panther froze. She looked at the meat, then looked at Jack. Her golden eyes were glowing with a wild light, the light of a hunter that had been alive for millions of years. The council held their breath. This was the moment they expected the human to be proven wrong. They expected Luna to ignore Jack and attack anything that moved. For 10 long seconds, nobody moved. The only sound was the hum of the station's engines. Then, slowly, Luna turned away from the meat. She walked back to Jack, bumped her head against his hand, and waited. Jack reached into his pocket, pulled out a small, dried brown treat, and gave it to her. She ate it gently from his palm. "She only eats when I tell her it's okay," Jack explained to the shocked council. "That is the bond." Counselor Vax sat back in his chair, his purple skin turning a shade of blue. He realized that humans had a power that was more frightening than any weapon. They didn't just conquer planets, they conquered the very nature of the beasts that lived on them. The council decided they couldn't kick Jack out yet, but they weren't happy. They ordered that Luna must be scanned every day to make sure her anger levels were low. But as Jack and Luna walked out of the chamber, a dark shadow was watching them from the ventilation ducts. The station's sensors were focusing so much on the murder cat in room 402 that they completely missed the silent approach of the Voidwalker pirates. The suspense was building, but not from the cat. The real danger was coming from the stars, and soon, the aliens would realize that having a murder cat nearby was the only thing that could save their lives. After the intense meeting with the High Council, the aliens decided they needed to watch Jack and Luna more closely. They set up a secret observation room filled with giant screens. These screens showed every corner of Jack's living area. Commander Krell, Counselor Vax, and a team of alien scientists sat in the dark, watching. They weren't just curious, they were terrified. They wanted to see the exact moment the murder cat would lose control. To them, Jack was like a man sitting in a room with a ticking bomb, and they didn't want to miss the explosion. The first few hours were very confusing for the observers. They watched as Jack did normal human things. He cooked food, he cleaned his boots, and he listened to music. But Luna was always there, following him like a dark ghost. Every time Jack moved, the alien scientists held their breath. When Jack sat down to eat, Luna jumped onto the table. The scientists screamed, "It's happening. She is going for his throat." But Luna just sniffed Jack's sandwich, and Jack pushed her head away, saying, "No, Luna, this is too spicy for you." The aliens were shocked. Jack had just pushed a Class 5 predator's face, and the predator had simply sat down and started purring. Then, things got even weirder. Jack reached into a box and pulled out a long piece of thick rope. "Okay, Luna, you want to play?" he asked. The aliens leaned closer to their screens. "Play?" Counselor Vax whispered. "What kind of play involves a rope and a killing machine?" They watched as Jack started swinging the rope in circles. Suddenly, Luna's entire personality changed. Her pupils grew so large that her eyes looked like black holes. She crouched low to the ground, her tail twitching with violent energy. To the aliens, this looked like a predator preparing to launch a lethal strike. Luna jumped. She moved so fast that the cameras barely caught her movement. She flew through the air, her claws out, and landed right on top of Jack. The impact was so loud that the aliens heard it through the speakers. Jack fell to the floor, and Luna began gnawing on his arm. "Red alert! Send the rescue team!" Commander Krell shouted, reaching for the emergency button. They were sure they were watching Jack's final moments. They expected to see blood and hear screams. But instead, they heard something that made them freeze in total confusion. Jack was laughing. "Oh, you think you're tough, do you?" Jack shouted from under the Panther. He was actually wrestling with the beast. He was using his bare hands to push against her massive chest, and Luna was biting his arm, but she wasn't breaking the skin. To the aliens, this was pure madness. It looked like a battle for survival, but the human was treating it like a joke. "He is insane," Counselor Vax whispered, his 4 eyes blinking in disbelief. "He is teaching the predator how to fight. He is training his own murderer." The computer analysis showed that Luna was using only 1% of her strength, but even that 1% could crush a human's ribs. Yet, she was being careful. She was holding back. While the aliens were busy watching the fight on the screen, they didn't notice a small change in the station's security logs. Far away in the docking bay, the silent Voidwalker pirates had successfully hacked the outer doors. They were moving through the ventilation shafts, invisible to the station's sensors. The pirates were clever. They knew the station's security was focused entirely on room 402 because of the murder cat panic. They were using the cat as a distraction to take over the entire station. The suspense in the observation room was high because of the playtime, but the real danger was crawling right above their heads. Back in the room, the wrestling match ended. Jack was covered in sweat and cat hair, looking exhausted but happy. Luna was lying on her back, her big paws in the air, waiting for Jack to rub her belly. As Jack reached down to pet her, Luna's ears suddenly snapped toward the ceiling. She stopped purring. Her body went completely still, like a statue carved from black stone. Her golden eyes narrowed, and a low, guttural growl started deep in her chest, not the playful growl from before, but a warning of real death. The aliens in the observation room were confused. "Why did she stop?" Krell asked. The human didn't do anything wrong. They watched as Luna stood up and walked toward the center of the room, looking up at the air vents. She bared her teeth, showing the full length of her daggers. Jack noticed the change, too. He stood up slowly, his face becoming serious. He knew that Luna didn't growl like that at him. She only growled like that when she smelled an enemy. The suspense was now at a breaking point. The aliens finally realized that the cat wasn't looking at Jack, she was looking at the ceiling, right where the pirate invaders were hiding. The silence of the observation room was shattered by a sudden, deafening explosion. It wasn't coming from Jack's room, but from the main docking bay. The screens in front of Commander Krell and Counselor Vax flickered and turned red. A robotic voice filled the station. "Security breach. Main power grid offline. Internal sensors disabled." The Voidwalker pirates had finally made their move. These pirates were famous for using a high-tech EMP pulse that turned off all electronic weapons. In an instant, the alien guards' plasma rifles became nothing more than heavy sticks. The high-tech station was now a dark, metal maze, and the predators from the stars were coming inside. Commander Krell tried to call for backup, but his communicator was dead. He looked at the screens that were still working on emergency power. He saw the Void Walkers, massive creatures with 4 legs and heavy metal armor, smashing through the station's corridors. They were moving toward the High Council chamber, capturing every alien they found. The station's security team was helpless. Without their energy guns, they were physically much weaker than the pirates. The aliens, who had spent thousands of years relying on technology, had forgotten how to fight with their bare hands. They were being hunted like cattle, and the sense of panic was spreading through the air vents like a poison. Inside room 402, the lights had also gone out, leaving the room in pitch-black darkness. Jack stood in the middle of the room, his heart racing. He couldn't see anything, but he could hear everything. He heard the heavy thud of pirate boots in the hallway. He heard the screams of his neighbors being dragged away. But most of all, he heard Luna. She was no longer the fluffy pet that sat on his lap. In the darkness, her golden eyes seemed to glow with their own light. She was moving around the room, but her feet made absolutely no sound. She was in her natural element now. While the aliens were blind and the pirates were relying on heavy armor, Luna was a shadow in a world of shadows. Suddenly, the door to Jack's room hissed open. 2 giant Voidwalker pirates stepped inside, their red-eye sensors scanning the room. They saw Jack standing there, looking small and defenseless. One of the pirates laughed, a sound like grinding rocks. Another weak biological for the slave pits, the pirate growled in a distorted voice. They didn't see Luna. She was crouched on top of a tall bookshelf, her body pressed flat against the wood. Her tail wasn't twitching anymore, she was perfectly still, waiting for the exact moment to strike. The pirates moved closer to Jack, reaching out with their heavy metal claws. The suspense in the room was so thick you could feel it. Jack didn't run. He didn't hide. He just looked at the pirates and said 2 words, Luna, hunt. The moment the words left his mouth, a black streak of lightning flew through the air. Luna didn't just jump, she launched herself like a missile. She landed on the back of the first pirate, her massive weight knocking him to the floor. Before the second pirate could even turn his head, Luna's claws were already tearing through the soft joints of his armor. The murder cat was no longer a pet, she was a storm of teeth and fur. The pirates, who thought they were the ultimate hunters, were suddenly the ones being hunted. Back in the observation room, Krell and Vax watched the scene on a grainy, black and white emergency camera. They were paralyzed with fear and awe. They saw the pirates, creatures that had defeated entire armies, screaming in terror as a pet ripped them apart in the dark. Luna was moving with a speed that was impossible for a biological creature, jumping from the walls to the ceiling and back to the floor. She wasn't using lasers or plasma, she was using the ancient, brutal tools of Earth. The aliens realized that while they had spent centuries building better guns, Earth had spent millions of years building a better killer. The pirates in the hallway heard the screams of their friends and stopped. They were confused. Their sensors told them there were no soldiers in room 402, only a human. But the sounds coming from that room were not human. They were the sounds of a nightmare. The pirates began to back away, their confidence shaking. For the first time in their lives, they felt a cold fear in their hearts. They realized that there was something in the dark that didn't care about their technology or their armor. Jack stepped out of the room into the hallway, his face calm, with Luna walking slowly beside him. Her fur was messy, and her eyes were fixed on the next target. Commander Krell watched Jack on the screen and felt a strange new emotion. It wasn't fear anymore, it was a tiny spark of hope. He realized that the Council had been wrong about humans. They thought humans were weak because they lived with monsters. But now he saw the truth. Humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy because they were the only ones who could control a monster and point it at their enemies. The station was still crawling with pirates, and the Council was still trapped, but for the first time since the attack began, the aliens felt like they had a chance. The real hunt was just beginning. The hallways of the Aegis station were no longer the clean, bright corridors of a trade hub. They had become a dark, cold hunting ground. The only light came from the flickering red emergency lamps, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. Jack walked slowly, his boots making a soft clack-clack sound on the metal floor. In his hand, he carried a heavy metal pipe he had pulled from a broken wall. But he wasn't the main threat. 5 feet ahead of him, Luna moved like a liquid shadow. She didn't walk, she flowed. Every few seconds, she would stop, her ears rotating like radar dishes, sniffing the recycled air for the scent of the invaders. Back in the observation room, Commander Krell and the scientists were watching the screens in total silence. They were seeing a side of Earth life that no history book had ever described. They saw a group of 6 pirates guarding the main elevator that led to the council chamber. The pirates were heavily armed with kinetic axes and thick shields. They were nervous, looking left and right, their red sensors searching the darkness. Suddenly, they saw a pair of glowing gold eyes in the distance. They began to fire their projectile weapons toward the eyes, the bullet sparks hitting the walls. But the eyes vanished. Luna didn't run away, she ran up. The aliens on the screen gasped as they saw Luna use her powerful back legs to jump onto the wall, then to the ceiling, and then into a dark maintenance pipe. She was moving above the pirates now. Jack walked into the light of the flickering lamp, acting as a distraction. The pirates focused all their attention on the weak human, laughing as they prepared to crush him. They didn't see the black shape dropping from the ceiling like a falling star. Luna landed directly on the leader of the group. With one swift motion of her paw, she used the pirate's own momentum to throw him into the wall with enough force to dent the metal. The other pirates panicked, firing wildly, but Luna was a blur of black fur and sharp claws that it wasn't just a random attack, it was a tactical execution. Luna would strike a pirate's leg to make him fall, then move to the next one before the first could even scream. Jack moved in behind her, using his metal pipe to finish the job or push back any pirate that got too close to his pet. The aliens watching from the security room realized that this was a partnership. Jack provided the strategy and the distraction, and Luna provided the lethal force. For millions of years, humans had hunted alongside wolves and cats on Earth. That ancient, primal energy was now being unleashed in the middle of a high-tech space station. The suspense reached its peak when they reached the grand doors of the High Council chamber. Standing in front of the doors was the pirate captain, a monster of a creature twice the size of a human, covered in experimental power armor. He held a massive energy hammer that crackled with electricity. He saw Jack and Luna and let out a deep, metallic growl. "You think a mere animal can stop me?" the captain roared. He swung his hammer, smashing a hole in the floor. The shockwave knocked Jack backward, his metal pipe flying out of his hand. For a moment, Jack was defenseless. The pirate captain raised his hammer for the killing blow. Luna let out a sound the aliens had never heard before. It wasn't a purr or a roar, it was a high-pitched scream of pure rage. She didn't care about the hammer or the armor. She saw her, human, in danger, and the bond of thousands of years took over. She leaped through the air, but the captain was fast. He swiped at her with a metal fist, hitting her in the side. Luna hit the ground hard and skidded across the floor. The alien observers cried out in horror. Counselor Vax covered his eyes, thinking the murder cat had finally met its match. The pirate captain laughed, stepping over Luna's body to reach Jack, but the captain didn't know about the Terran will. Luna wasn't dead. She shook her head, her golden eyes turning a dark, blood-red color. She ignored the pain in her ribs and stood up. At the same time, Jack grabbed a handful of loose wires from the broken floor and threw them at the captain's power armor. The sparks blinded the pirate for just a second. That was all the time Luna needed. She didn't go for the armor this time, she went for the throat, the only part of the pirate not covered in metal. She clamped her jaws shut with the force of a hydraulic press. The pirate captain dropped his hammer. The heavy weapon hit the floor with a loud thud that echoed through the entire station. He struggled, trying to pull the 300-pound panther off his neck, but Luna was a statue of muscle and anger. She didn't let go until the captain stopped moving. The hallway went silent. Jack stood up, breathing hard, and walked over to Luna. He placed a shaking hand on her head. "Good girl," he whispered. Luna let go of the pirate, looked at Jack, and immediately shifted from a killing machine back into a pet. She licked the blood off her paw and rubbed her head against Jack's leg as if nothing had happened. Commander Krell, watching from the security room, finally breathed out. He looked at the screens and then at his own hands. He realized that the galaxy was a very different place than he thought. He had always believed that power came from the biggest gun or the fastest ship. But now he saw that true power was a human being and a murder cat standing together in the dark. The council was safe, but the station was changed forever. The aliens were no longer afraid of Luna. They were afraid of what else humans might be hiding on their small, blue planet. The dust of the battle finally settled as the station's main power flickered back to life. The harsh white lights of the Aegis station returned, revealing the true scale of the chaos. The hallways were littered with broken pirate armor and dented metal walls, but the center of everyone's attention was room 402. The High Council, now free from their hiding places, walked slowly toward the chamber. They didn't come with guards or guns this time. They came with a deep, silent respect. When they reached the door, they saw Jack sitting on the floor, leaning against a pile of broken pirate shields. He was tired, his clothes were torn, and he was gently scratching Luna behind her ears. The murder cat was purring so loudly that the metal floor beneath them vibrated with a peaceful rhythm. Counselor Vax was the first to speak. He stepped forward, his purple skin still pale from the shock of what he had witnessed on the security screens. He looked at Luna, whose fur was stained with the dust of the fight, and then he looked at Jack. "We owe you our lives," the counselor said, his voice trembling. "Our sensors called this creature a monster. Our scientists said it was a Class 5 predator that would eventually turn on you. But today, it didn't just save you, it saved the entire Galactic Council. We have lived for thousands of years, exploring thousands of planets, and we have never seen a bond like this. How is it possible for a killer to have a soul?" Jack looked up and gave a small, tired smile. He pulled a small brush from his pocket and began to clean the dust off Luna's black fur. "It's not about having a soul or being a killer," Jack explained softly. "On Earth, we learned a long time ago that strength isn't just about who has the biggest teeth. It's about who you stand beside. Luna isn't a weapon I carry, she's a part of my pack. To you, she is a murder cat. To me, she's the one who kept me from being lonely in the deep dark of space. Humans have a strange habit of finding the scariest things in the woods and turning them into our best friends. We don't conquer monsters by killing them, we conquer them by loving them until they love us back." The alien leaders stood in a circle, watching as the terrifying beast closed its eyes and leaned into Jack's touch. It was a sight that broke every law of alien biology they knew. Commander Krell stepped forward and looked at the digital scanner in his hand. The device was no longer flashing red. Instead, it showed a strange new icon, a green heart-shaped symbol that the station's computer had created just to describe what it was seeing. "The scanner finally understands," Krell whispered. "It's not detecting a predator and a prey anymore. It's detecting a single unit. You are two bodies, but one mind." The suspense that had gripped the station for days finally broke, replaced by a sense of wonder that would change the galaxy's view of humanity forever. However, a new kind of suspense began to grow in the minds of the council members. If a simple pet like Luna could destroy a squad of the galaxy's most feared pirates, what else were humans keeping on their home planet? Counselor Vax leaned in closer, his curiosity overcoming his fear. "Jack," he asked, "is Luna the most dangerous animal humans have tamed? Are there others like her on Earth?" The room went very quiet. The alien leaders held their breath, waiting for the answer. They realized that they had spent years looking at humans as weak, because humans didn't have natural weapons. They were now realizing that humans didn't need natural weapons because they had the monsters of Earth on their side. Jack laughed quietly, a sound that made the council members exchange nervous looks. He pulled out his small handheld computer and opened a folder titled Earth Wildlife. He showed them a picture of a massive grizzly bear, then a great white shark, and finally, a tiny, angry-looking creature called a honey badger. "Luna is a sweetheart," Jack said, his eyes twinkling with a bit of human mischief. "In the history of Earth, she's actually quite polite. There are things back home that even I wouldn't want to meet in a dark hallway. We have animals that can survive fire, animals that can't be killed by venom, and animals that will fight a lion just because they are bored." The faces of the council members turned various shades of blue and gray. The realization hit them like a physical weight. Humanity wasn't a weak species living among monsters. Humanity was the species that had survived a planet so dangerous that everything on it had to be a Class 5 predator, just to stay alive. The aliens had always wondered why humans were so calm in the face of space travel and alien threats. Now they knew. To a human who grew up in a world of panthers, bears, and wolves, a space pirate was just another day at the park. The murder cat was just the beginning. As Jack stood up to go back to his room, Luna followed closely at his heel, her tail swishing with pride. The aliens cleared a wide path for them, bowing their heads as they passed. They knew that from this day forward, no one would ever dare to threaten a human colony or a human ship. Not because they feared the humans themselves, but because they feared the friends the humans might be bringing with them. The story of the murder cat of room 402 became a legend, a warning to the rest of the galaxy: if you see a human sitting alone, leave them be. But if you see a human with a pet, run. Because on Earth, the only thing more dangerous than the monsters is the species that decided to take them home.